I'm a skeptic in general and don't buy into any paranormal mumbo jumbo. But something happened to me in college, though I can't explain it, and it's just so weird that I make it a point to remind myself a few times a year that it actually happened. I'm afraid that I'll forget how it really happened and eventually convince myself that I don't remember it correctly. In any case, here it is. I was sleeping over at my girlfriend's house for a few nights, and I'd been having a similar nightmare. But the fact that I was having a nightmare was in itself a little odd. I rarely remember my dreams at any point in my life, but suddenly I was having them all the time. The dreams themselves were terrifying. I don't remember all the details, but I clearly remember the source of my fear. It was a very tall, spindly figure, with thin arms and legs and the head of a dog. It looked kind of like an Egyptian Anubis. I remember that it would do some kind of dance towards me in my dreams, whilst waving its arms wildly above its head. Almost like one of those weird air-driven advertisement things they put in the front of car lots to get your attention as you drive by. Sounds retarded when I type it, but it was scary enough that it still fills me with a sense of dread when I think about it 15 years later. All of that is explainable, until this one night. I was having the dream again, and woke up right around the time I usually did, only this time, not just with residual terror, but also an overwhelming sense that something was very wrong and I was in imminent danger. I looked over at my girlfriend just to see her eyes snap open. We looked at each other and we just knew. Get out. We flip on the lights, and here's where I begin to doubt myself because I constantly have to remind myself, yes, that did happen. We froze. All around the room, all my girlfriend's hats. There's one on the lamp, a few on the door, one on the exercise bike, one on the desk. When we went to sleep, they were all in a box, in one box. We stood there for a moment, all in shock. All the while inside my head, I am still feeling, get out, get out, get out, get out. We didn't say a word. We just looked at each other, both as white as a sheet, turned and got out of her apartment, not even pausing to put on shoes. We didn't sleep over there again. I never had that dream again, and to this day I have no idea what the hell to think of that. But I don't ever want to forget it either. It was so creepy.
My grandfather's company, which involves timber and mining, was setting up an office in a relatively remote part of a third world country and found a house that was dirt cheap, even for third world country standards. Obviously there was a catch. The villagers in that area told him not to purchase it since the house was haunted and everyone who had ever lived there died violently. He decided it was just some superstitious BS and got it anyway. So the guy setting up the house will live on the top floor of the house with his family, and the lower floors for the office. He moved in with his family and 3 kids. Anyways, my grandfather suddenly got no news from him for the longest time. Since this was a remote part of a third world country, he wasn't too worried, since he just assumed that they lost power or something. He finally contacted the local police to go check on the guy, since he was completely unreachable. They found everyone dead. Apparently the guy killed his wife, kids, and then himself with a machete. Yes, not a gun, a fucking machete. He actually hacked himself to death. It wasn't one of those cuts on the wrist to let everyone slowly bleed to death. Everyone was hacked down, including the guy himself. The description of the scene had to be an exaggeration, since I'm assuming the sight of 5 decapitated bodies, including 3 kids, were scary enough to make people see things. So I won't bother putting it in here, since I'm not sure what's true, and there were details that people could not have possibly witnessed. Let's just say I stopped paying attention after I heard the phrase, magic machete. I was told the entire room was covered in blood, including the ceiling. Some people were saying the blood on the ceiling had to have gotten there because the spirits threw the bodies around. I had to explain about blood pressure and got tons of weird looks. Now, the weird part, if this isn't weird enough, was that he managed to barricade the door with the bed, with his wife and kids on it. And it's one of those gigantic old beds that it's extremely hard to move. The locals say this is evidence he was possessed by spirits. I say moving to the middle of nowhere in some third world country drove the guy nuts, and crazy people can do all sorts of crazy shit, and even perform crazy feats of strength. Anyway, my grandfather had to pay a few bribes to make sure nothing got to the press. Not hard, in the middle of nowhere. About the entire thing and get the police to classify the deaths as natural. No idea how they'll explain that. Third world countries are awesome. He tried getting other volunteers to set up the office, even if they haven't heard all the gory details because of my grandfather's gag order. Everyone knew that the previous guy died. No one volunteered. He promoted one guy, gave him a fancy title, and told him he's in charge of setting up that office. The guy quit.
The house I grew up in, and was actually born in, was built in 1912, and at least one person has died there. Anyway, there was a crawl space from the back of my closet. It was a hole about 3 by 3, maybe 4 feet, just enough to literally crawl through, that went to the back of the 2 closets in the master bedroom. Those entrances had actual panels that went to the crawl space. We never went in there, partially because there was no need, and mostly because I was a kid and it scared the shit out of me. Well, in my teenage years, we were redoing the insulation in our attic. The only entrance to the attic at the time was a tiny panel in the ceiling of one of our upstairs rooms. We were also going to build one of those pull-down ladder things during this project. The attic always scared the shit out of me, because sometimes when we were kids, we would wake up and the panel would be slightly shifted, as in pushed up a bit and not covering the full hole. But we figured that it was our dad messing around with us or some shit. Anyway, attic insulation blah blah. The attic was unfinished, so we were laying boards over the crossbeam, since you could hypothetically fall through the floor of the attic if you stepped poorly. I noticed that the attic goes way back, a lot further than I originally thought. I kept going, and it drops down to this large area that I would later realise is the roof of our porch. It was like a tiny room, but the floor was sketchy like the rest. There was a single creepy wooden children's chair standing up in this room area of the attic. There was also a board or piece of wood thing about 1/2 inch thick in the area, like a regular sheet of paper. There were names carved onto the board, one in each corner, one on the top, bottom, left and right, and one in the middle. The weird part is that the one in the middle was carved deeper than the others, then gone over in some kind of red paint/ink. The weirdest part though, is that it was my name. And my name has a semi-unique spelling, but I wouldn't say it's extremely uncommon. I met a couple of people with my name that have spelled it the same, but still, it's really weird. I really didn't know what to think at the time. We redid the roof of the porch shortly after and pulled the chair and board out of there. And at the time I just dropped it and got the hell out of there. I know it might not sound that scary to you, but to go to the darkest corner of your house to see a tiny child's chair and a weird board with your name, the way you spell it, carved into it, is really, really creepy. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I want to give a huge shout out to Slumlocker for his help in the collaboration. And remember, the video isn't over yet. The 3 other stories are only available on his channel, and they're all awesome. So be sure to go check it out along with all his other great content and subscribe to him if you already haven't. Remember to like and comment on what you thought of this video though before you head on over. And if you've already seen all 6, it's time to hit that subscribe button here on my channel, or even if you haven't seen all 6, because you won't want to miss what's next. Speaking of which, why not check out some of my other content if you've already finished them all, using the oh so handy links on screen now. But lastly guys, thank you so much, sincerely, for the 400 subs. I'm really quite astounded as how we got there so quickly, but thank you just really so much. You're all awesome and I'm so glad you're all enjoying the content. But anyway, for now guys, I think I'll let you get on with your night and thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.